You're chosen, aren't you? So we have a freaking chosen one plot and a dystopian cautionary tale story. I really messed this one up, guys. God, there are good adaptions, and there are bad adaptions, and then there are adaptions so twisted and so antithetical to the source material that you begin to question if you enjoyed the source material in the first place, if it was even good, or if you're just remembering it better, and then you go back to the source material and you realize, half happy and half quite disappointed, that no, the adaptation just really f***ed it up. And unfortunately, Brave New World 2020 is this kind of adaptation. Putting aside that, this is a decent, 2020 big budget streaming service sci-fi show. It feels a bit like Euphoria. It feels a bit like West World, and it looks fantastic, and it's full of pretty talented actors that you've never heard of. It's that kind of show. And probably the people that watch this show without ever having read Brave New World, the book, will think, this is a mildly entertaining, stylish, but kind of forgettable show with characters that just don't quite feel right. And they leave it there and they forget about it. But for people who like Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, for the many people who think it's one of the best novels ever written, who think this is not just another sci-fi book, that this is right up there with 1984, and perhaps even better because it more accurately predicts the dopamine-driven world we're in right now with our technologies and doodads, etc. I don't need to go into a boomer rant about that. For people like that, this show is a train wreck. And really, I could make this video long. I have pages and pages of notes about every little thing in every little episode, but it doesn't deserve that. It doesn't need that. So in the book, you have Bernard Marx. He's shy. He doesn't fit in. He feels emotions he doesn't know how to explain. In the show, he's in a position of power. He's basically watches over people and dishes out soma if there are any problems. But from the beginning, they get it so wrong because he and then the person above him have complete powers of surveillance. Everyone has a little eye doodad, so everyone can see what everyone else is doing. So it gets a little Black Mirror in there, and then eventually in the end it turns into like a cautionary tale about social media and interconnectedness in our world. The problem is Brave New World isn't about that. Brave New World is not about surveillance. It's not about being afraid of people in the government watching over you and then yelling at you, because they do. In this show, if you step a toe out of line, they scare you and they threaten you with like reintegration or banishment. And it's basically just 1984. It's a big evil government that's scary, which is not what Brave New World is about. The whole point of Brave New World is that they want what the government is inflicting on them. The government's barely inflicting anything, as a matter of fact. The people just want to be happy, and so they take drugs and they have sex. And you're left as the reader to wonder, well, what's so wrong with this? This seems like a pretty good world. And that's what's amazing about Brave New World, is you have to figure out why you don't like this world. Aldous Huxley doesn't tell you. You read and you say, well, that feels a bit weird and that feels a bit weird, but why? What's so wrong with people genetically being put into their places and they're happy and programmed to like their places? What's so wrong with completely limitless casual sex and drug use? Is there anything wrong with it at all? And I don't know. Some of those things might be good. Some of those things might be bad. The point is, Brave New World lets you decide. It doesn't, from the very first scene, show you, this government is evil and scary, and if you step out of line, they'll catch ya. And then there's the Savage Lands. And this is where the show really just... I can see the writers are meeting now where they are debating what to do with the Savage Lands, which they're not even called that in the book. In the book, there's a reservation where people who are not in the dystopian society live, who don't take drugs, and who are basically descendants of Native Americans, and they basically live as Native Americans did. And then eventually one of them returns to the world, goes to the dystopian world, and he can't fit in. And on the surface, the plot of the show is the same. There's something called the Savage Lands. The difference is it's not Native Americans. It's like sort of Appalachian impoverished white culture. And I don't know why this was chosen. Were they afraid to depict Native American culture? Were they afraid of being offensive? Could they not hire Native American actors? But for whatever reason, they chose like trailer trash as the people on the reservation. And the main character, John, who really, this show really revolves around him. I mean, they chose John as the protagonist, the guy that goes to the dystopian Brave New World from the Savage Lands. And here's the thing. In the book, John is a thinker. He's learned about the world and the breadth of human experience through reading Shakespeare. Like that, Shakespeare is his thing. And so he quotes Shakespeare a lot. He doesn't understand Shakespeare, but he can feel that there's something in Shakespeare that this world is lacking. In the show, John is an angsty white dude who works on cars that, instead of expressing himself through Shakespeare, the way he sort of touches on the breadth of human emotion is by throwing drinks. And let me tell you, there are a lot of drinks that get thrown in Brave New World. He also walks around a lot, listening to music. And that's kind of the stand-in for Shakespeare, except they never really talk about the music. They really just don't discuss it at all. And I would understand if the showrunner was like, you know what? We can't have our characters talk about Shakespeare. It's not visual enough. It just doesn't work. And so instead, we're going to have him like love classic Hollywood movies. Okay, fine. I don't like it as much. I don't think Hollywood movies are really a great stand-in for Shakespeare and what it might show someone about the breadth of human experience. But okay, I get it. But instead, you have throwing drinks, getting angry, and brutally walking around listening to music. That's the breadth of human emotion in Brave New World. That's what John does. The difference between him and the dystopian citizens is he throws a whole lot of drinks and gets really angry all the time. And that's it. That's human experience, brooding and throwing drinks. But he's also like not consistent. And at first I was like, what are they going for? Like, is he temperamental? Is he supposed to have a mental illness? And I realized, no, he's just poorly written. Because at one moment, John is like a brooding artist type, which he showed no inkling of being in the Savage Lands. In the Savage Lands, he's just a guy that washes a car and like kind of like sleeps with someone's girlfriend. And then we find out, oh, he actually has an extreme temper. And then we find out, oh, he loves music. But then he's also a sensitive artist. But then he's also a gruff, like blue collar type of guy. He's just everything the writers want him to be. And so really he comes off as nothing but extremely childish. And I don't know why this happened. I almost feel like they wrote the script for a younger character and then they cast like the 28-year-old guy that they got. Because in the book, John is like a teenager. So him being angsty and lashing out, even though he lashes out a lot less, and obsessing over Shakespeare makes more sense. Because in the show, what we have is a 29-year-old man who doesn't explain himself to people, who just sort of walks around getting angry all the time. And somehow that's supposed to inspire the citizens of the dystopia to like awaken to their emotions. And of course, this being a mainstream television show, he does inspire a revolution. He inspires a revolution by walking around, brooding, and throwing drinks, and that's about it. He gives a few rousing speeches to the Epsilons, who again, the show is so gutless. In the book, the Epsilons, the Betas, they've all been genetically manipulated. So they're actually different, which makes the moral question a lot more difficult if they're actually different. But in the show, it's just like, oh, the Epsilons, they're basically of equivalent intelligence, and so they're just being held down like slaves. So you can just instantly say, oh, that's extremely evil. And like, it's no longer morally as interesting. Because basically they just treat it as like a parable of like American civil rights or something. Where the Epsilons are being held down, but they're exactly like everyone else. In the book, they're not exactly the same. The Alphas are much smarter than everyone else. Which is more disgusting and weird and creepy, which is the point. But so he inspires the Epsilons to start a revolution, and there's a horrible, bloody, violent revolution, and it gets out of hand. And so I guess the show is also about like how revolutions can get out of hand, and you shouldn't be so irresponsible. Which, yeah, that's true, because the main character, John, is so unlikable in how he inspires the revolution. He constantly uses the Epsilons to like towel him down and carry his bathrobe, but then he's constantly ranting to them about how they should feel more, and they should really know about emotions. And then they just sort of know about emotions instantly. Like, I get it. The book Brave New World really, it's almost a book that's trying to inspire hopelessness in the reader. It's really trying to show you how terrible a purely pleasure and gratification driven society would be, even without any fear, without any unhappiness. How terrible that would be. Where this show is about so many things. It's really just like a Black Mirror episode with a bit of 1984 influence stretched out over 9 episodes with a protagonist who's a million different things. And then there's Bernard, who in the book, Bernard actually doesn't fit in. Like, he has a limp. He's awkward. People don't like him. He's prickly. In the show, he's handsome, tall, charming. He's a little bit awkward in a few points whenever the show needs him to be. And then the next scene, he's like a schmoozing, smooth guy. And then he randomly gets an inferiority complex, which it's kind of there, but we don't have any reason for it. And his doubt and his feelings of doubt towards his own society are so like weak. It's like the writer split the amount of dissatisfaction that was in John in the books and like split it over a whole bunch of characters. So like in Brave New World, the show, every character like is kind of not okay with the society. And so that's, again, it defeats the point. The whole point is we're supposed to see that people truly love it. They love the pleasure. They love not feeling sadness. They love not worrying about the big questions of life. But in the show, from the very beginning, the main female character, Lenina, is doubting and a little bit unhappy. Why? She just is. And also the drug. We don't know anything about the drug. We don't know how the drug really works. We just know it kind of makes them happy, whereas in the book it's explained heavily. And we get to watch with horror as John's mom, who was from the dystopian world, but then went to the Savage Lands and got stuck there and then finally returns. And all she does is vegetate and take soma. Even though she's lived there for so long, she doesn't like how humans live. She wants to return to the drug daydream. In the show, his mom just like dies. And like doesn't really matter at all. And doesn't teach us anything about how people react when they're deprived of pleasure. The more I think about it, the madder I get. I mean, this show is so expensive. It looks so good. Most of the actors are great. The actor for John, I don't know. It could be the writers, but like he's not believable. But then the writing is also like just not believable at all. So maybe he did an okay job and trying his best. But the more I think about it, the madder I get. It's like every single theme in the book was just strip mined out of here until we're left with this like shell of the story about a fish out of water. And the fish out of water scenes are still the best in the show, where you're seeing John react to this horrible world. But it's just so over the top. Like he goes to like a dystopian version of like an extremely intense sensory movie experience. And like they act like zombies towards him and it's terrifying, but it's like that's not why this society is supposed to be terrifying. They're not supposed to be zombies. They're not supposed to look creepy. It's supposed to be creepy because it's so perfect and so pleasurable. I know I sound like a broken record, but just every single scene, like any scene you could take from the show, and they just get it wrong. And every scene, either the society is so over the top, like evil looking, that you never have to even question if it's good or bad. Or there's like a government guy acting like a 1984 Nazi enforcer who's just being completely like enforcing through the threat of violence, just like any other scary government. Or you have like a bad romance going on, like where John and Lenina get together so quickly. They have no chemistry at all. I'm sorry, but they don't. Her and Bernard made way more sense. I just don't know. After watching the show, I have no idea who these characters are. I have no idea what they really want. I have no idea like how they might. I can't guess how they might act in any given situation. I can usually guess that John will throw a drink. That's about it. There's also an AI element brought in where like this world arose because an artificial intelligence like developed it to be the perfect society. But again, then it's a show about the threat of AI and how AI can make a society that's not ideal for humans because the society in the show is obviously not ideal. There are also a lot of plot lines like in the Savage Lands that are basically just like dropped and go away. Like so many things you think are going to matter just end up not mattering at all. This whole like Savage Land revolutionary woman, the first few episodes you think is the plot, it just goes away. And it really, you can just completely forget about everything that happened in the Savage Lands. None of it matters. And the culture of it doesn't matter because John doesn't really talk about it in any detail. He's just angsty. We don't learn about Savage Land customs. We don't learn about what he's missing about that world. He just sort of says, you guys don't feel emotions. You take too many drugs. And then he takes drugs and he has sex and he doesn't feel emotions. And then you don't even see that conflict taking place. He's just kind of like a complete mindless hypocrite. And then it gets worse. I mean, at the end, someone says to Lenina, you're chosen, aren't you? So we have a freaking chosen one plot and a dystopian cautionary tale story. Like, she's a chosen one, and that's why she's been dissatisfied the whole time. Like, yep, that's how it's gonna be. If we live in a horrifying nightmare of a dystopian addicted society, we're gonna get a chosen one, and that's gonna solve our problems. That's what we should rely on. That's what we should learn, right? The only time that there's a sort of moral gray area is at the end. Bernard gives a speech calling John a disease for having destabilized everything. And I agree with him. Like, John has not made any sort of good appeal for human emotion and for the breadth of experience because he's not like a smart character. He doesn't read Shakespeare. He doesn't know anything. He just throws drinks. He's taken part in several things where he's basically just like helped to kill innocent people and then expressed very little remorse. He's like the worst activist revolutionary you can imagine, where he doesn't care about the Epsilons. He uses their labor for his own pleasure, and then he just rants at them about how they don't feel emotion, they don't understand, they're so pathetic. Like, he's the most insufferable type of like organizer of like a revolution you can possibly imagine. And it blows up in his face. A lot of people end up dying, and so I'm like, yeah, John sucks. He's not shown anything or given anyone a chance to like actually see what they're missing. It's completely reasonable that every character in the dystopian world would not like him and would want nothing to do with him, but not a challenging way where like you're challenged like, but is human unhappiness and dissatisfaction and poetry, is all that stuff really worth it? It's not like that. It's just like John is just annoying and mean, so of course we don't want him around. In the last shot, it's Lenina, the Beta Plus girl, looking out on a field and smiling. She's gonna build a new society, as easy as that. There was a violent revolution, and now she's going to make a new world. The ending of Brave New World, the book, ends with John hanging himself. He can't fit into the dystopian society. He goes to live a life of self-flagellation and contemplation after the death of his mother, after complete rejection from the society, and the press leaps onto this and likes to watch him, and then he feels so detached from the press, from everything around him, he hangs himself. It's a sad book. So why did you choose to adapt it if you weren't going to make a sad show? If you weren't going to have the balls to actually have some of the themes in your show? I know why. Because in the year of our Lord 2020, you want to have the next Westworld. You want to have the next big sci-fi show that drives people to your streaming platform. So you pay up to the Huxley estate to buy the Brave New World rights because you can't write your own sci-fi show. That won't get enough eyeballs on it. You got to pay the Huxley estate for the Brave New World name that probably doesn't have as much cachet as you thought it had, except with people like me who actually care about the themes. Sorry, so it didn't bring as many eyes to your show. No one really cares that much about Brave New World, sad to say. And so now we have a soulless show that gets everything wrong, that has amazing production value and good actors, that is going to do nothing for anyone at all. We already have Black Mirror. We already have Euphoria. What we don't have is Brave New World. One of the most relevant, important pieces of art that you could possibly show to people in 2020. And you ruined it. I guess that's all I have to say. Brave New World 2020. A masterclass in missing the point. That'll be the title of the video. If you like this video, like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to take your soma.